with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, April 7th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Alex Pareene of the Good AP Substack will be joining us. And later in the show, Jacob Silverman, freelance journalist and proprietor of the podcast The Naked Emperor about FTX, will be with us as well. Meanwhile, the Tennessee Democratic lawmakers that were threatened with expulsion have been, or at least 2 of them. The white woman narrowly survived expulsion from the state legislature by the Republican supermajority that was real mad about peaceful gun control protests. The Supreme Court has ruled in favor of a West Virginia trans girl trying to compete in track and field. Good news, but the ruling is yet another shadow docket, meaning this doesn't have much salience for future rulings on trans rights. This comes as Biden is getting widely criticized for trying to strike a middle ground on trans athletes. His proposal would axe blanket bans but allow discrimination on a case-by-case basis? What are you doing, dude? Go ahead.
This has Jeff Zients' fingerprints.
It really
all over
does.
it, doesn't it?
This and the drilling and the Willow Project.
The third way is back, baby.
Yikes. AOC calls for the impeachment of Clarence Thomas in the wake of ProPublica's report on his lavish trips paid for by a billionaire Republican donor. Clarence Thomas has released a statement, a rare one for him, saying, well, this is just a friend of mine. Which is odd because the LA Times just re-upped their 2004 reporting on Thomas's relationship with this very donor. Curiously, after that report came out, he stopped disclosing what was going on with them. A third night of Israeli attacks on the Al-Aqsa Mosque amid Ramadan. Late-night worshippers were beaten. Israel also launched rocket attacks in Lebanon and Gaza. Death row inmate Richard Glossip's conviction may be vacated after a special counsel showed major gaps in his murder conviction. Unemployment claims increase, thanks to the Fed. Survivors and guards tell Vice that 39 migrants, or the 39 migrants who perished in the immigration jail, were still being detained because they couldn't afford the $200 that would be needed to bribe the security guards for release. The GOP is very upset that the judge in the Trump case apparently donated $15 to Biden in 2020.
I'll buy you a sandwich.
It really is, especially in New York City. Honestly,
that's a lunch, yeah. That's all a full lunch in New York.
The Republic. I mean, that's the Jenga block that's going to knock
delivery
over
fee.
Everything. And lastly, the 13-year-old son of a DeSantis critic has been arrested for terroristic threats. Fishy. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, everybody. Happy Passover. Happy Ramadan. Happy Friday. For us, we celebrate Casual Friday over here, and for any of the actual holidays that you celebrate. Although, for me, I mean, man, Big news week. Lots to get your arms around. And on Thursday, I was reading the news and I was like, wow, it was only one day that I was hosting by myself on that Wednesday, and it felt like it's been a week already. So without Matt to fill in my gaps in thinking, I just have to ramble for the most part. I mean, you've been good about it, but it's a struggle, but I'm getting in a good groove.
Yeah, you certainly are.
Next week,
this is spring training. Next week is the big leagues.
Oh yeah, baby. Yeah, right. I'm getting my my sea legs under me here.
Absolutely.
But it's just been a crazy news week. And we have a lot to talk about with Alex Pareene, which I'm excited to get his take on a bunch of stuff. And then we will, don't you guys worry, we will be doing an extensive deep dive into Mehdi Hasan's absolutely incredible cathartic takedown of Matt Taibbi and his stewardship on behalf of one of the richest men in the world, Elon Musk. If you guys saw the interview, there was a real awkward moment where he's just asked to criticize him on union busting, on censorship of critics in India working on behalf of the Indian government, which coincidentally was part of our interview yesterday. We interviewed one of the two authors. Ryan Grimm was the other. Murtaza Hussain was the reporter that we spoke to yesterday. Coincidentally, we had that on the show, and then Mehdi asked him about it. So lots of symbiosis over here on the left that has some principles. But let's turn to what happened yesterday in Tennessee. So Democratic representatives Justin Jones and Justin Pearson have officially been expelled from the Tennessee state legislature. Both are young, both are black, both are in their 20s, and both of the lawmakers that have been expelled, just essentially fired, even though they were elected to their office. Both were peacefully protesting for gun reform. There was a third Democratic representative who was under threat of expulsion, and she narrowly survived by one vote, Representative Gloria Johnson, and she's a white woman. So that just looks as bad as it is. It is what it is. The Republicans in Tennessee are who we thought they were, and they are an extremist, insane party. They, unfortunately, in Tennessee, have a supermajority. I believe there's just like 23 or 22 Democrats versus 75 Republicans, which gives them this power to expel. Under Tennessee's Constitution, House or Senate, they're able to punish lawmakers for disorderly conduct with expulsion if they have the 2/3 necessary. So they certainly, with 75, have that threshold comfortably.
Yeah, so it's 27-6 in the Senate, and then 75-22 with 2 vacancies in the General Assembly.
There you go.
It is absolutely overwhelming. To begin with, regardless of any of the demonstration of these Democrats, day in and day out, they are just met with overwhelming resistance to anything that they could possibly try to enact.
Exactly. So, and this was just them flexing on them, saying, you're already just kind of a fly buzzing in my ear. We have all the power that we could ever want. We have all the money and the donors and the NRA connections. It doesn't matter.
It'd be a real shame if we just kicked you out of office.
Here, this is the lesson that they're trying to teach them. And luckily, there were a lot of protests, particularly by student groups, backing up these two state representatives. But here is Justin Jones speaking with a thunderous crowd behind him right before being expelled from the state legislature. Here he is.
But she'll be back. You plan to be back.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is
back.
Justin Pearson. Justin Pearson. I apologize. They're both named Justin. Okay, Justin Pearson.
But she'll be back. You plan to be back. We'll be back. I believe Memphis and Millington gonna send us back. And we're gonna keep fighting for our communities because the status quo is not working. It's hurting people. It's killing people. And they're treating things like this as normal. We can never normalize the ending of democracy. We can never normalize the tyranny of the way that these people in positions of power are operating due to white supremacy and due to the maintenance of patriarchy. That's what we're up against. But we are going to fight it because we believe that there is a future that we can live into that is better than the present that we currently have.
Yeah, that actually was right after he was expelled. We're about to play one of the speeches from Justin Jones before he was expelled. But yeah, I mean, this is as undemocratic as it possibly could get. There's the Republican Party, which is all for we're the free speech party, right? As Ron DeSantis bans books. We are the anti-cancel culture party as we expel state legislators for protesting in a way that we don't really like. It's a decorum conversation. They used a bullhorn, and that hurt my ears a little bit. So we're gonna cancel you from the halls of power, even though, as Bradley has pointed out, all they have really is their voice, because they're so outnumbered by Republican state representatives in their place of work. So they have to use the bully pulpit, protest movements, peaceful protests, in order to serve their constituents.
And this is how you use this particular seat when you are a state legislature in a blood red state like Tennessee.
Yeah.
This is how you there is a reason that this week we are speaking about 3 Democratic members of the Tennessee State General Assembly, when many other weeks we're not talking about the Tennessee State General Assembly. Like you said, they have to exploit what they have in terms of what they can do purely by way of agitation, purely by way of civil disobedience. And this is an impossible job that they have. They do not have a lot of resources to begin with, and this is an enormous load to bear on what I imagine is probably an office that has maybe 2 to 3 staff members. Gloria Johnson, the other member of the legislature, the white woman who was not expelled, mentioned that when she was critical of the governor before during COVID, they gave her a closet-sized office where she couldn't have in-person meetings due to social distancing because it was pre-vaccine COVID times while she was in the assembly. They can punish these people at will. This is not an easy thing for any of them to be doing. It would have been so much easier for them to be like their 9 other colleagues and just vote it down and not be the ones being expelled.
Right.
They are taking an enormous stand with massive amounts of oppression, regardless of the support that they have. And it is an extremely commendable thing that many, many, many other state lawmakers in states like this should be emulating. Because
Absolutely.
there's no other way. There is no other way to fight this entrenchment from the position that they're in.
And that's how much of a threat it is for them to use their voice. That the Republican majority, supermajority, wasn't just content with them being able to vote for progressive or liberal causes and have that vote really mean nothing because of the overwhelming number of Republican seats on the other side. They needed to get them out of there for daring to use their voice in a more meaningful way. And what's insane is that here we'll have Representative Justin Jones before the expulsion speak on this. In 2019, there was a Republican lawmaker named David Byrd who had been accused very credibly of sexual misconduct with teenagers when he was a high school basketball coach, including one of the victims who spoke to CNN, playing a voicemail where David Byrd was apologizing to her for all of the pain he had essentially caused. He wasn't explicit in the allegations, but it was just another piece of evidence to show, well, there was something to apologize for. And this guy Sexton, what is he, the speaker or the speaker? The Republican speaker, Sexton, at the time said, well, you have to balance things, and you don't want to overturn the will of the voters. That was a quote that he had. And here is Justin Jones calling out that very hypocrisy right before his expulsion. Do we have sound? Yeah. Oh, he's about to speak. Okay, gotcha.
Let's talk about expulsion. For years, one of your colleagues who was an admitted child molester sat in this chamber. No expulsion. One member sits in this chamber who was found guilty of domestic violence. No expulsion. We had a former speaker sit in this chamber who is now under federal investigation. No expulsion. We have a member still under federal investigation. No expulsion. We had a member pee in another member's chair in this chamber. No expulsion. In fact, they're in leadership, but in the governor's administration. And so once again, what you're saying to us, since you're trying to put us on trial, I'll say what you're really putting on trial is the state of Tennessee. What you're really showing for the world is holding up a mirror to a state that is going back to some dark roots, a state in which the Ku Klux Klan was founded, is now attempting another power grab by silencing the two youngest Black representatives and one of the only women, Democratic women in this body. That's what this is about. Let us be real today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well said. That long list. I mean, that was more than the example that I laid out there. It's just there's people who, domestic violence. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. All that matters is if you're on the red team.
It also just really helps, and I know that this might not seem super critical, but politics is about aesthetics, and these two young men are not only extremely, extremely talented orators and extremely, extremely skilled at getting their points across. It really, this is almost evocative of what was once, as he said, not only the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan, but one of the strongest battlefields in the civil rights movement in the 1960s.
I love that he made that connection.
These two men walk in the footsteps of people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, Stokely Carmichael. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that, because this is that. This is fighting back against tyranny in America, and this is fighting back against a oppression that seems to be, if there were not any sort of protest or any sort of opposition to it, completely suffocating.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Before we do, let me just read this IM from Luck saying, in the headlines you mentioned the tweet from Rebecca Jones about their child being arrested. They are well-known grifters. Search her name and Rebecca Watson, and additional reporting has already come out that the kid was sending death threats, and it was far more serious than her tweets framing. I got that from the article. I still think we should flag it in the sense that there are a lot of kids that say things over Snapchat, and it's just important to know, all right, this is on the radar. But definitely, this was not just based on the tweet, but I appreciate the additional context.
Yeah, we were going to discuss that yesterday or the day before, and I only wanted to flag it because the Miami Herald reported on it.
Right, we waited
before more coverage of the tweet thread actually.
Yeah,
happened.
but Lux put in the additional context
yes.
that is necessary for that. With that said, though, our favorite sponsor, Sunset Lake. Seder, here we go. I use one of their products.
Emma's got the sign.
There we go. Look, I got the sign. I hold the power. Yeah, I literally used their melatonin Seder gummies every night. I used it last night. I'm a bad sleeper. Apparently, it's contagious in the office, and I really need a good night's sleep. And this is one of the only things that makes me feel good when I wake up. It actually helps me stay asleep, the Sunset Lake melatonin gummies. And also, you don't have to have a pharmaceutical to help you fall asleep. It's a natural way. It's my go-to, and it's basically a daily use for me. I also, right here on my desk, have, for when I get a little dry, the Recovery Body Lotion, which smells incredible. Here we go. Jasmine, Sebede moisturizer. They just have a ton of great products. They have smalls, they have the tinctures, which I also love to use. They have keef. They have, a variety of smokables if that's your if that's your jam. But they have products for, your skincare, for sleep, all that stuff. There's a lot of junk CBD when you go to the bodega or you go to like a standard smoke shop. Just don't trust that stuff because you don't really know what's in it. That's not a problem with Sunset Lake CBD. You have third-party testing, it's pesticide-free, all that good stuff, and you can get real, authentic, excellent CBD that will help you relax. If you use the code LEFTISBEST to get 20% off, you can go to Sunset Lake, C, and then B, and then D.com. Use the code LEFTISBEST, get 20% off. Sunset Lake CBD, our favorite sponsor, one of our favorite sponsors, I should say. But we're good, yeah. And then we are going to a quick break where we have another word from Sam from the past.
Hey, folks! This one of today's sponsor is a product that it came out of an experiment that I did when a buddy of mine gave me some cannabis seeds, and I planted them, and they grew into big plants, but I didn't sex them properly. Apparently, there's male and female cannabis plants, and when you don't sex them, what you get at the end of that process is a bunch of seeds. But my loss, your gain, because my buddy was like, we can sell these. These are great seeds. So if you go to Cedars Seeds, SEDERS seeds.com, you can purchase a packet, 6 seeds. Check your local regulations, see if you're allowed to do, outdoor growing, your own growing. Some places you can, some places you can't. In New York, you can. 6 plants, and check it out. If you use the coupon code SEEDS, you're not only going to get the special Majority Report 15% discount that we got running right now, you'll also get free shipping. So check it out, cedarsseeds.com. Oh, and use that. Use that. You can just put your phone right up on that. Check it out.
We are back, and we are joined now by the one and only Alex Pareene of the Good AP Substack newsletter and contributing editor to the New Republic. Dear friend of the show, Alex, thanks so much for coming on.
Of course, Emma. Hello.
Hello. Big news week. Pretty damn big, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to make some really terrible joke there, but I'm just drawing a blank. So, yeah, what's been going on? Anything big?
Yeah, I mean, there were some images of, Trump arraigned in the courtroom. Like, what do you make of that? I know that in terms of actual electoral consequences that we'll talk about today, it's probably the least important, oddly enough, Trump being the first former president to face criminal charges on this front, because we're also going to talk about the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which is massive. What happened in Chicago. I don't even know what this does in terms of moving the needle for the Republican voter. My guess is it does nothing except be neutral or help him. But putting the horse race stuff aside, what was your immediate response to the 34 felony counts being brought against Trump?
To be totally honest, my immediate response was, I'm so glad I'm not in Manhattan today.
Oh my God, the traffic would have been insane downtown.
I'm glad I'm not downtown. I'm glad I don't have to cover this somehow. The people who showed up just to sort of be interviewed are lunatics. But I don't know. It's funny because you can take it as this world historic thing, the indictment of a former president, an unprecedented, a big a piece of American history. And then on the other hand, it's all kind of regular, right? Because we're just talking about it's a lot of counts there, but I think despite what some people have sort of argued, he's going up for the sorts of things that people have been tried for in the past, right? Like people were, John Edwards was like investigated for this stuff, you know? And it's also like pretty normal for a person who has committed a whole bunch of campaign finance violations. You know, not as normal as it used to be, but it's like, yeah, sometimes they get charged, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
I mean,
so it's
Dinesh D'Souza knows this well. If we're
Right.
also using other examples, like, but for John Edwards, that's the thing where I would imagine that Alvin Bragg knows about that John Edwards case and probably has heard about it from the other lawyers working on this many, many times. Is the difference that there's this massive pattern of behavior? And the fact that like Michael Cohen is spilling all the tea, and they're probably going to be able to get the National Enquirer guy to speak on it. It must just be that Bragg feels like he can make a stronger case because of the pattern and the fact that the bookkeeping fraud seems to be so brazen, and you have like multiple people who are able to speak on it.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, and I'm not by no means am I a legal expert. No, but
right.
I would imagine that like I would imagine they have looked at the Edwards comparison quite a bit, right? And I think you know, there's a sort of difference between being on the record, being like, we need to do these crimes so I can get elected, which like is, you know, there's sort of like a paper trail of you know, people in the orbit being like, we got to do this for the election. And then the Edwards defense was always like, I did, you know, the hush money was for my family. I was paying hush money. I was paying hush money to save my marriage.
Oh yeah, you know, the one he's just like so glowing and openly in love with his wife about, right? He's a family man. That's
he was. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's again like you're right, and it's strange, frankly, but you're right that I don't think electorally this moves the needle much. But we shouldn't use that to completely diminish it, because it is a fact that Donald Trump like has spent many years trying to avoid being in the exact position he was in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Like I think like avoiding that was one of his driving impulses for many years.
Right. I mean, I think so too. And it just is interesting to me as well how none of this would have happened truly if he didn't run for president. And I don't mean that it's not a political prosecution, that it's a political prosecution like what the Republicans are saying. I mean, look, there's some element to that, right? Alvin Bragg says this is going to put my name in the history books. And there's, of course, some careerist incentives, as there are for any prosecution for the most part. This is just a very unique set of incentives. But the fact that Trump was so sloppy and patchwork in his hush money payments, it shows that he didn't even really think he was going to win. And I think that was well documented in that book Devil's Bargain too, that he really wanted to make a bunch of money. And he was freaked out as he just kept winning. He had to go back and clean up his work and just do these things so sloppily that it ends up in these dozens of counts of potential fraud.
Yeah. And the political part of it is like, well, we elect prosecutors in this country, and like, congratulations, you've discovered that like the law is political. Yes.
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, that reading is, I think, completely spot on. And, you know, if anything, it goes to show that if you can, you know, get away with what could probably be called lots of different forms of white collar crime for a very, very long time, to suddenly be in a position where you're under much more scrutiny because you are about to win a presidential election. Like, you have all of this, like, you didn't have to you didn't have to be so good at covering your tracks before, just because of the sorry way that we investigate and prosecute fraud and white collar crime in this country. Like, you just didn't have to work that hard to sort of avoid it for many years. But you put a spot, like, you just absolutely, you're just like, you're putting a target on your back when you actually like start winning elections.
And he handled this like he would any kind of standard rich guy, any kind of standard billionaire who's escaped accountability for a long period of time. All right, just fix it. Go to my fixer. But politicians, no matter how rich they are, understand, like, no, we've got to clean this up in the right way. And he just did not have the people around him to make that case. And it's also just interesting, the sequencing of it, because we don't know when this Georgia other shoe is going to drop in that case. And then you have the grand jury investigation into the hoarded documents. Like, I mean, none of us know what's going to happen, but based on your decades of covering politics and your read on the Republican Party, now we'll return to the horse race. What do you think this is going to do to, and if you had to kind of make a bet, gun to your head right now?
You know, it's funny. I think I think if you are Trump, and this is not to say this is the most logical course of action, but this is the course of action that would make sense according to Trump logic. I think if anything, you're like, I got to just be president again by any means necessary. I think that's what you're thinking right now. Like, if I'm in jeopardy, I have to become president again, because then I'm untouchable.
Right.
I'm like, no one, like, I'm untouchable. As long as I'm in the White House, I'm untouchable. So if anything, that's just like, there are probably still Republicans who are like, you know, he'll be so defeated by all this that he'll like just give up. Or I do think that is still a mindset some of them have, where we don't have to do anything because this will be so bad that he'll either go away or he'll fade from relevance. But, you know, he's going to be more determined than ever to be president again, I think. And, you know, I do think that at the same time, Democrats should not allow themselves to be in 2017 mindset where they think everything that happens is good news for Trump, right? Because it will remain the case that, like, most Republicans will stick with him and stand by him. But, like, all of this stuff is just, like, even no matter what polls say, it's just going to increase that sort of, like, Trump fatigue that I think was actually a major factor in him losing in 2020, right? Among normal people.
Oh my God.
Like, we don't want to go back.
That's why I hope he's the nominee. Like,
absolutely.
There's zero or moderates or independents that are moved by the arrest. I mean, moved in his direction.
Yeah. Even if they think it's bullshit, people are still just like, we're just tired of this. We're tired of this circus. We're tired of this circus. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and that's, in my opinion, why Biden's kind of static, low approval ratings relative to how the Democrats performed in the midterms. That's why I think they don't really matter that much, because he's so bland and boring, and there really is, even if people aren't jumping for joy for him, a desire for that in the wake of, like, all of this chaos, which exhausted people. He might have low approval ratings, but it's more just that people are like, I don't see him around, so I don't really like that. But deep down, they kind of like that he's not in the headlines every day.
Yeah, and I think that we, you know, I think a lot of, you know, people who've been around electoral politics for a while don't really grasp that mood. I think especially among you know, younger people, and I take that to mean people under like 50, who might just be like, you know what, like, Biden's not my guy. Like, he's just not my guy. But whatever, like, better than the alternative. And that's a real thing. And you look at these elections we've been having, and I know we're going to talk about Wisconsin, but I don't think conservatives understand that there may not be excitement, and there may not be like a lot of positive feelings and excitement among the electorate about Joe Biden, but there's a lot of antipathy and hatred of Republicans in the electorate, and that's like they're making it that worse every day, and that's going to be, I think, like the driving factor, almost more than people's love or lack thereof for Uncle Joe.
Exactly. Well, you just mentioned Wisconsin, so let's talk about that here. So, it incredibly consequential victory in Wisconsin, with the Supreme Court flipping to liberal for the first time since 2008. Scott Walker had a take. He's emerged from, I don't know, his gold-plated dungeon paid for by the Koch brothers. It's like people forget that there have been many governors who were crowned as the next Republican nominee who had a lot of cash behind them. Talking about you, DeSantis, who ended up just like flaming out because they don't have it.
Bobby Jindal.
Yep. I mean, Jeb Bush from Florida.
Chris Christie.
Right. Walker is the OG, though. I mean, it's like people, for some reason, especially because there's a good parallel to draw, honestly, with DeSantis right now, because DeSantis is doing all the things that the Republican Party nationally thinks is like energizing. He's just tripling down on culture war stuff. When Walker was in office, he was the godfather of the Tea Party politics, of right to work, of gerrymandering, and like that ended up helping the Republicans a lot. But that was the thrust of where the party really wanted to go at that moment. And right now they're just lost in the culture war sauce. But here's Scott Walker's take on the results here. Younger voters may be behind the stinging loss for conservatives in Wisconsin this week. I mean, you don't think? In November 18th, 18 to 29-year-old voters in Wisconsin went with the radical candidate by 40 points. Digital ads, student coalitions, none of these will do it. We have to undo years of liberal indoctrination. And here's what I'll say. First of all, I love that he pretends that those are these are just like the good faith tactics that his Republican Party engaged in to box out liberal and non-white voters during his time in Wisconsin, when it was just gerrymandering and taking a sledgehammer to unions, which is what did it. But it's liberal indoctrination, Scott Walker, or is it that the youth see no hope for the future under a Republican Party, that they want labor to have more power, that they believe in the right to an abortion, which is probably really what did it in this instance? Like, it just, the contempt for voters astounds me to this day still, that they think that it's all some sort of game of brainwashing, and they're just not doing it the right way, as opposed to, no, what you're proposing is horrible.
Well, what Walker's conclusion is really funny, because he says, like, digital ads and stuff like that, that's not going to cut it. And like, what we need to do is undo indoctrination. Okay. How do you propose? I don't know. It seems like a heavy lift, undoing years of indoctrination, if that's the problem. We're seeing something. This has been evident in the numbers for years now. That is, as far as I know, unprecedented in like the Anglosphere politics, specifically in the US and the UK, which is that like a generation of voters is not getting more conservative as they enter adulthood and enter middle age.
Right. They're not going down the boomer route.
They're not going down the boomer route. And I think that for a long time, people on the right sort of assumed that what would happen is that everyone would grow up and turn right wing, just because they just thought that was a law of nature. And as that has not happened, it has intensified this sort of war on the young that defines a lot of conservative politics now, which is funny because then it becomes this really sort of clear feedback loop, right? Like a lot of conservative politics is a sort of open warfare on the priorities and often the rights of young people. And then at the out of the other side of their mouth, they're like, the young hate us because of left-wing professors. Like that's what they're, like they organize their politics around, completely stymieing anything young people want, and then blaming indoctrination for the fact they're hated.
Bradley, actually, because it's funny you mentioned that, because I was just looking at that graph again, and I'm reminded with that Arizona figure being so huge.
Yeah.
This is, I guess, a Brookings graph. That Arizona margin being so massive for young voters in terms the biggest for Senate elections, I guess in last year. That is an immense failure on behalf of the whole indoctrination industrial complex led by someone called Charlie Kirk, whose whole damn philosophy is about going to college campuses and convincing kids that the conservative agenda is correct, and he gets a boatload of money to do it. And Arizona was his ground zero. Arizona was the place where he was putting most of his focus and, I believe, money for Kari Lake and such. And literally, it's like it's almost as if his efforts made it worse.
Yeah, like yes, yeah.
But he'll still get a boatload of money from Republican donors because they will buy into the premise that Scott Walker is laying out there, that all you need is just a little bit more indoctrination on our side, and then young voters will be convinced that we should gut Medicare and also that trans people are demonic.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's the no, it's the children who are wrong campaign.
Yeah.
But it speaks to, again, how I think easy the grift is on the right. Like you can get a lot of money from old rich people by saying, I will go to college campuses and defeat liberal indoctrination, and show no results. And there's something there have been people on the right who have been trying for years to sound alarm bells about how they're losing a generation of voters. And like, Trump set that back years because by winning, essentially, right? Like it was the same as, the famous like RNC postmortem or whatever. Like the Trump victory just like allowed so many people in the Republican Party to be like, no, what we're doing is working. And I think they don't have another strategy beyond Charlie Kirk. Like I don't know what their plan
well,
B
here
is.
I didn't even realize this, but thank you to PGH Pete for pointing this out. Put this tweet back up, because right beneath it, I did not even realize this. This is Scott Walker launching his own thing. So he's here. Scroll down here. That is why I am leading a new effort at YAF to counter the impact of radicals on campus.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, great. So this is just all a part of your grift. He's just doing the Charlie Kirk thing, except he just might have a Young America's Foundation to inspire students to become bold advocates for freedom on campus, and their head photo has Ben Shapiro, Scott Walker, Matt Walsh, etc. Like, this is just their version of the Charlie Kirk grift.
Where that Matt Walsh video we watched yesterday, Emma, where that trans person confronted him, that's a YAF event.
There we go. So again, I mean, honestly, this is a way for them to make money, and also, and there's going to be a bunch of old billionaire or multimillionaire donors who are like, yes, like, we just need to teach the kids about hard work. Here's $3 million, Scott Walker.
If you want to talk about how this effort kind of backfires, like one funny way that it does is that what all of these campus right-wing groups kind of do is attract the biggest weirdos on campus. And then the biggest weirdos on campus go on to work in Republican politics and advise people like Ron DeSantis. And I think it's actually starting to be something people notice, because there was this conventional wisdom for the last few years that, Democrats had too many nutty left-wing young staffers that were making them do nutty left-wing things. But when you actually look at, like, well, who's being advised by weird nuts that want to do unpopular things in American politics? Like, maybe it's like every single prominent Republican,
Right?
and so they're training. They're like not just training, but they're like identifying the most repellent people under 30, like America's most repellent young people. All of this money is going to identify them and send them right into Republican politics to, like, ensure that the Republican politics remains as off-putting as possible for years to come.
Right. Exactly. Let's talk a bit about then Chicago here. So
Yeah.
here's my question. I saw people discussing this online. Can you imagine if New York City had a teachers union as powerful as Chicago?
Oh man, I mean,
wouldn't that be awesome?
It would be, yeah. Like, and to some extent, that would not, in Chicago, it required, like, open political warfare with the establishment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here in New York, obviously there's a lot of, a lot of people in New York are no fans of the teachers and the teachers unions, but the teachers unions already have more partnership with power than they did in Chicago, where the mayors for many years were, like, much more openly at war with them. But yeah, I mean, my God, I'm insanely envious. I'm insanely envious of Chicago right now, just for that organization and what they're able to do. And I mean, it's like, it should be a lesson for I'm just gonna say, like, it should be a lesson for urban progressives, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say this is a lesson for socialists or the left, but if you are an urban progressive, like, yeah, like, get in, like, work with the unions and increase union power, and, like, build on it, right? Like, that's how you actually, like, get this. That's how you get these victories. It's got to go through there, right?
Well, there's a vacuum here in New York compared to Chicago, in that there is a very powerful union here in New York. They just got a bunch of raises, actually.
Yeah,
they just negotiated a new contract with Eric Adams, and that's the police union. And they're powerful in Chicago, too. But look who won. I mean, it was really a head-to-head matchup between the police union candidate and the Chicago teachers union candidate. And in the wake of just all of this talk about rising crime and Chicago being a hellhole, and we needing to really crack down on crime, and this really spat in the face of that narrative of there being blowback here, because the opposite happened. I think a lot of that had to do with high-profile endorsements, like from Jim Clyburn and from Bernie Sanders. But we spoke to some prospect reporters who were covering it on the ground, and a lot of it was the union's endorsements, yes, but also the the strategy of door knocking, particularly in Latino heavy areas, where they turned out for Brandon Johnson in a way that was not that Vallis was not able to keep up with. So it's this combination of embracing teachers unions, union support, frankly eschewing narratives about crime that are trying to be imposed on them from the National Democratic Party, and making it a more holistic approach about uplifting economic prosperity within the city more broadly, and good old-fashioned leather shoe door-knocking politics, which, I mean, that combo brought him seemingly over the top, Johnson.
Yeah, and that's right. And I think it does. I think you could see in some of the post-election coverage how blindsided a bunch of the establishment was, that the crime narrative was not the only thing that decided it for voters, right? Like I think that they just didn't. There were a lot of a lot of pre-baked takes that were before the election that were like, this is this is all about what happens when you don't take crime seriously. Lori Lightfoot it was lost because of public safety. And when you come down to the people who live in, and then you can look at the electoral map in Chicago, and it'll be a pretty clear the neighborhoods with the most reported crime were not the neighborhoods that were persuaded by Vallis's message, right? And I think we understand why the sort of cop union affiliated figure was not that popular in neighborhoods with a lot of safety issues, and that reason is the long history of how race decides Chicago politics. But when if you just put it as like, if you don't take the bait on the like soft on crime, you don't take the bait on the soft on crime narrative. And then if you have a contest between the cop union and the teachers union, this is something perhaps a lot of politicians don't understand because they're the sort of freaks that hate teachers. But a lot of people, normal people, are like, oh, you know what? Like, the teachers are less frightening and more nice to me. So I like their person a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly right. The demonization of teachers, I mean, and they were doing it like the narrative about the Chicago Teachers Union was prepped too because of COVID and the fact that they stood up for their rights in that instance. Yeah. So, honestly, lots of good news this week, but some bad news in Tennessee that we covered. And before I let you go, I wanted to pick your brain on it. Those two Tennessee lawmakers expelled, Justin Pearson, Justin Jones, the white representative, Gloria Johnson, ended up surviving by just one vote, but she was one of the three under threat. And the two, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, ended up actually getting expelled, which is incredible that that is in the Tennessee state constitution, that they're able to just say, like, we're firing you, even though we're supposed to live in a democracy, and like there's no mechanism to keep them in office. They're just out because the Republican supermajority decided, we don't like the fact that you protested and used your voice for the first time. We're used to the Democrats being in the background, being so dwarfed by our numbers. The fact that you made national news actually doing politics, we can't have that. We'll keep the guy that has been accused of sexual misconduct against teenagers, but for actually doing your job as a Democratic representative and standing up for the people in the state, you're out. Yeah. And they expelled them with 2/3. I cannot believe. Well, I can, but it's incredible that mechanism exists. In the state constitution.
It's one of those. It seems to me like it's one of those. I guess constitutional or legislative remnants of, written at a time when you would just assume, well, there's no way 2/3 of this body will use this irrationally, right? like we're gonna make it a really high bar, because if we make it a really high bar, that'll mean like it'll be serious. If they have to eject someone, it'll be pretty serious. And that just didn't account. I mean, it just didn't account for the way our party system developed, and then the way the Republican Party developed within that system. Just like our political institutions were just simply not built. Not like, first of all, they weren't even built for the party system for the most part, but they simply weren't built for one in which, like, one of the parties just got so, brazen, so anti-democratic, so like just willing to just exercise power for the sake of it. And so all these rules we had that were based on cooler heads eventually prevailing. We've already seen a bunch of them not work, and that's going to continue to be the story going forward. I do think it's funny though that the lawmakers, as far as I know, can just be reinstated. I think it now it goes to like city or metro governments, but yes, so they could theoretically just be back at work. But yeah, I mean it's the sort of like really terrible display of anti-democratic power that we would be speaking about as a huge scandal if it was happening overseas and not in an American state.
And it's the look what you made me do politics of the Republican Party. And they learn these lessons really quickly in that when the House censured Marjorie Taylor Greene, I forget what the sequencing of it was. Was Ilhan Omar first or after? I forget exactly. But either way, when they censured Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, stripped her of committee assignments, that kind of thing, the right was like, okay, we can do that too. We can do that too. And they did it with Ilhan Omar. And now they're saying everything's an insurrection. Every left-wing protest is an insurrection because they've decided that January 6th was not an insurrection. It was just a protest. So now every left-wing protest is an insurrection. Like their ability to turn around and flip reality on its head for their own kind of narrative gains. It's astounding.
Well, it comes from both deep cynicism and sort of general stupidity, right? It's like this really amazing combination of the two, where it's like the cynicism is that they genuinely believe that no one actually has real principles or real values. They're like, no one actually means it. This is why the phrase like virtue signaling is popular, period, because they're like people are only ever pretending to believe in things. So therefore it does like everything is political and everything is meaningless. But like but it also like it's exactly the same way that the term, which I never liked, but the term fake news went from like a factual description of articles about things that didn't happen to like just anything I don't like, right? Like that was just how it just transformed, because it doesn't matter if words mean anything. They all that matters is how like useful they are politically.
It's craven.
Yeah, it is. Totally. Yeah. And so now insurrection is doing the exact same thing, because it's this belief that like that it wasn't a big deal, but like it was good. It wasn't a big deal that it happened. Also, it's good that it happened. Also, it was so bad that the other side is actually the ones doing it. It doesn't, it's Calvin Ball, but it comes from a place of complete cynicism about everything.
Well, it's also for all of the right's talk about 1984. The fact that they've made words mean nothing within they do it super quickly and they all coalesce behind it. It really is. It's stunning. But all right. Well, Alex Pareene, can't thank you enough for your time today. Everyone check out Alex's work over at the New Republic and on the AP Substack. Anything else, Alex, that you want to plug? Oh, and at Popula as well.
Yeah, and I've been doing some work at Defector too. So check out the subscriber, the worker-owned Defector.com for all your sports entertainment news.
Yes. Defector. Bradley is like the king of loving Defector. Every time
my favorite, one of my favorite websites.
He listens to the
card-carrying
podcast.
subscriber.
Yes.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Love to hear it.
Yes. Yeah. So they really know how to pick good ones. Alex Pareene, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Of course. See you later.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be with Jacob Silverman. We'll talk about his FTX podcast, and then I have enlisted him for the fun task of deconstructing this Mehdi Hassan Matt Taibbi takedown. Be right back. We are back, and we are joined by Jacob Silverman, a freelance journalist who just came out with this excellent 4-part limited series podcast, The Naked Emperor, about FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, or SBF. I mean, everybody's a 3-letter acronym these days, and crypto generally. Jacob, what's your middle name? I mean, you gotta come up with your own.
I will reveal that my government middle name is Isaac.
Okay, JIS here with us.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about The Naked Emperor.
Sure. It's a 4-part podcast for CBC. Each episode's about 30 minutes. It's really kind of beginning to end, or at least beginning to now, of the FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried saga, and designed for, no crypto knowledge required, no interest required, really more about kind of timeless themes of fraud and deceit and greed and hype and celebrity and the ways that manifested within crypto. But it's more sort of a corporate crime story than is necessarily, hey, this is a crypto or tech story.
Yeah, I mean, so like, where does the Sam Bankman-Fried prosecution stand right now? Like, I mean, I think a lot of people have fears that he's going to be singled out as the singular grifter who totally warped what crypto really should have been intended to provide. And so all we need is some substantial or substantive regulation, and then cryptocurrency can survive and thrive. That's my fear. I mean, what's your take on how he kind of stands in the cryptocurrency zeitgeist?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because it's certainly a big deal. He was the most visible face of crypto, I'd say. Ran FTX, which was by some measures the second largest exchange. Binance is the largest in the world, and its CEO CZ is being investigated all over. So, crypto, and then there are all these other companies that have either recently failed, there are plenty before FTX, or that are in trouble and can't seem to follow the law.
Yeah.
So, the industry has widespread problems that kind of precede FTX. FTX really epitomizes some of them, and it was a dramatic highlight. Certainly the fact that SBF could go from kind of industry golden boy, the guy who was going to bring us safe regulation, supposedly, and to villain and kind of arch grifter in the space of a week. That was really shocking to people. So, and that, I think, is also in the average consumer's mind what they probably think now when they hear crypto. I mean, I talk to people in the industry, and I also talk to regular folks, normies, or people who so-called retail investors, people who used to own crypto or do. And a lot of people are either disillusioned, or they hear crypto and they think scam, or they think, oh, that guy who was in the commercials who's now wearing an ankle monitor and living in his parents' house in Palo Alto. Like, the image problems are very real, but I also think they are translating into people not wanting to come back to the casino table, so to speak. And that had been going on even before FTX. You had these other failures of major companies. You had even one like this guy Do Kwon, who was arrested in Montenegro last week, I believe. His company was a major failure and kind of kicked off this whole crypto winter. That happened actually about a year ago. That was pre-FTX, and he's only now been arrested in Europe. He was on the run. South Korea and the U.S. both want to extradite him for various financial crimes. So, this is all very much still ongoing. And as much as Sam Bankman-Fried is kind of public enemy number one for people in crypto, especially because he's kind of ruined the party, there are other potential villains to single out. And even just a number of Sam's colleagues have pled guilty. So he's not even the only person at FTX who's facing criminal liability.
Right. I mean, I'm curious about what dominoes fall there. I mean, and you guys, your book's going to be coming out soon, right? Or no? Maybe I'm mixing that up. I'm so sorry. I mixed that up with another announcement, but I apologize. That's
all right.
Yeah. Regardless, check out the podcast though. And I'm going to be listening to it a little bit later. Although, like the image of SBF is a little bit disturbing. What you guys have on the cover, it looks a little bit too much like him, a naked cartoon of him, but
tastefully pixelated.
Exactly. All right, well, let's dive into this here, because this was a kind of tease. We had Mehdi Hassan on last Friday.
Yeah.
This interview that was going to go down, and it really lived up to expectations fully. This complete demolishment of Matt Taibbi by Mehdi Hassan. And I watched this all the way through twice, actually. One, because it was so satisfying, and two, because I knew we were going to cover it today. And it's just amazing that Matt seemingly came into this interview with very little preparation, except he went like to the Glenn Greenwald 5-minute online school of it's time to attack MSNBC, and that makes me like pure in some way. Except that Mehdi had all of the facts like just out in front of him, ready to go. He really prepared. And I think it seemed like Matt did not. But like, let's start with this first part of this interview, because it honestly, it started off contentious off the bat, and you guys can check it out on Mehdi's YouTube page if you want to see the full thing. But this is towards the beginning of the interview where Matt Taibbi essentially speaks to Mehdi Hassan and explains why he thinks the Twitter files are so important, and kind of bristles at Mehdi's characterization of his new politics as like a departure from his past work.
Oh, why do you believe these Twitter files are so important, and what should our viewers know about what's in them that they don't know? Just briefly, your top lines.
First of all, I never said anything about woke McCarthyism, so do you want to take that back?
I didn't put that in quotes. I said a so-called woke McCarthyism. Jim Jordan has also talked about that, and that was a line into Jim Jordan. But happy to say that you haven't described it as McCarthyism. You've described it, I think, as a digital censorship complex. Industrial.
I said digital McCarthyism, not woke McCarthyism.
Okay, digital McCarthyism. We can correct that, yes.
Okay, good. So you started off, as I expected, with the whole "what happened to you, man" routine. Well done. So yeah, these are, I think the rest of the stories speak for themselves. I don't have to talk about how important or not they are. The audiences are interested in them because of what they show. That there was an organized, systematic structure in place for the FBI and the DHS to talk not just to Twitter and to forward thousands of moderation requests to companies like Twitter, but also to virtually every other social media platform. This is essentially an organized system of quasi-state censorship, and it's alarming. It's a lot more than what we thought was going to be there. And again, people are just looking at what we found. We don't have to make claims about it. They're upset about it because of what they're reading.
Well, not everyone's upset, and you do make claims, so let's talk about that today. And Matt, we're going to disagree a lot today. You've already started with disagreement, so let's start with some agreement. Should the FBI be wasting so much time and taxpayers' money flagging so many tweets to Twitter? In my view, no. Does the FBI have far too cozy a relationship with social media companies? Yes, I agree. But do your files provide evidence of government censorship? I don't think so. Let's just take the very first example you cited in the very first thread, which went mad viral. You wrote, by 2020, requests from connected actors to delete tweets were routine. One executive would write to another, more to review from the Biden team. The reply would come back, handled. Now, that sounds bad, but aside from the fact that the Biden team was not the government at the time, it turns out that at least 3, maybe 4 of those 5 tweet URLs that you linked to, that they link back to non-consensual nude images of Hunter Biden. Why was it wrong, Matt, for the Biden campaign, not the government at the time, to ask Twitter to enforce its own terms of service against people basically posting revenge porn? Do you understand why people question your credibility on this whole project when you omit such crucial context right from the get-go?
First of all, the reason that's important is because the ordinary person can't just call up Twitter and have something taken off Twitter. If you put something nasty about me on Twitter, I can't just call up Twitter and talk to the government liaison, whose name I won't mention on the air, and say, hey, can you take care of this? And have them take care of that. That doesn't work for the ordinary person. The Biden campaign could do it. Donald Trump could do it. But I can't do it. Can you do it? I don't think so.
You didn't answer my question. Why didn't you tell us what were in the URLs? Because it sounds much worse than it is when you discover that actually it was simply a violation of Twitter's terms of service, that these were nude, non-consensual images for Hunter Biden. Why not mention that? Did you not know? In which case, that's kind of incompetent. Or did you know and you were just hiding it from people?
Incompetent?
I mean, if you didn't know, if you put up...
MSNBC. My
Did
God,
you know?
got 6 consecutive years of just screw-ups on the Russia story.
Well, that was predictable. If we're going to do predictable, can you answer the question? Did you know what was in the URLs when you posted them? It's a simple
what was
question.
in the URLs.
Why didn't you tell us?
I don't need to.
Because it's really, you don't think it's relevant that it's a violation of Twitter's terms of service to have nude pictures of Hunter Biden up?
Look, every time they make a request to Twitter, they're doing what you're arguing. They're making the argument that, oh, we're not actually asking. This isn't censoring. This is just the government pointing out that
That's
this or
what the
that.
emails show that you posted. They don't demand anything, do they? They say, can you check if this is in line with your terms of service? And those URLs weren't. So I'm wondering why you wouldn't mention that.
First of all, the government, I can't even report that yet. All right. When they're doing this, it's self-evident what they're doing. And I don't have to make claims about what it is. I can just show you what they're doing. Everybody knows.
You didn't, Matt. That's the problem. You didn't show the world that the Biden campaign asked for nude images. You didn't. Other people pointed out what those URLs were. You never did. And that's the problem, Matt. There's a lot of omission.
Thousands of things that I wrote. Am I going to describe every single thing that I published?
That was the first Twitter file and the most viral tweet. Noam Chomsky, who you know and I know and we like,
which is about a subject you guys screwed up.
Said one of the, we'll come back to that, has said one of the greatest forms of censorship in the media is censorship by omission. You've heard that quote. There's a lot of omission in the Twitter files. A lot you and your colleagues don't tell us. You mentioned in passing, for example, in your very first thread that the Trump White House made requests of Twitter too, i.e. the actual government, not the Biden campaign. But you didn't tell us what those Trump requests were. It took an actual Twitter whistleblower. Well, it took an actual Twitter whistleblower in front of Congress to reveal that Trump once demanded Twitter take down a mean tweet about him from the model Chrissy Teigen. Yet you didn't mention that in any of your Twitter files posts.
Because I didn't have that story. I don't have it.
Doesn't that tell you something? That you had the Biden story and not the Trump story? That Elon Musk was giving you one side of the story?
No, you don't understand. First of all, that first batch of files resulted in the firing of Twitter's general counsel. We were looking at something on a very short time frame, but we didn't have it. I went out of my way to report that fact. I was the first person who reported that Donald Trump made requests and had them honored on Twitter.
But you outlined which ones the Biden team did without giving full context, but you didn't outline which ones the Trump. Well, maybe you should ask yourself why it is you didn't have it.
All right, so I mean, I want to play every second, but it's hard because I want people to go see the full thing. But like, okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, right? One is that he talks about how there's this organized systemic structure in place of quasi-state censorship, and we'll get to later parts in the interview where you find out that he conflated a nonprofit with the actual government and mixed up the acronyms. But we will get to that. Like, so when he brings up that example there, Jacob, of if you tweeted something mean about me, I couldn't, regular me, first of all, now he's buddies with Elon Musk, so he probably could, but regular old me couldn't get that taken down. Like, that's true, because you're allowed to criticize people on Twitter under their old terms of service. You couldn't get it taken down, in theory. But the part is that he's conflating is that these were nude photos stolen from Hunter Biden's laptop, revenge porn in a variety of states statutorily, that could have been taken down and clearly did fall under their terms of service. So then you boil the critique down to, okay, so this explosive report from the Hunter Biden angle is really just that powerful people have access to channels at social media companies and other major corporations that other people don't. That's the biggest story, bigger than what he reported on in the 2008 financial collapse, which is what he's claimed. Like, we already know that, dude.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when you actually look at the facts and what you can reduce this to, which is that there is a core of something objectionable here, which is, sure, the Biden team, and as Mehdi noted, not the government, had a direct line, it seems, to someone on Twitter. I mean, that is the kind of access that powerful and rich people have and that we should investigate. But they were asking for something that was clearly in violation of the Twitter terms of service. And then I think Taibbi is being a little deceptive when he says, like, if you post something mean about me, sure. But if there were, God forbid, if there were some revenge porn or something horrible like that posted about one of us, you could report it through the reporting systems Twitter has. Now, if you want to get into sort of a more complicated argument about or discussion about, are those reporting systems sufficient? They don't compare to what the Biden team had. Exactly, that's a more nuanced discussion. But people do have some recourse, maybe not a great one.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the point, right? It is, in my opinion, a completely marginal critique, and it's really a shallow analysis of like what power dynamics are. Yes, the Biden team has better connections than average Joe or bot farm or not bot farm, but a regular person with an anonymous account to make a report about some kind of violation of terms of service. And so, and then he just keeps returning to, well, you're MSNBC, and I that's the thing that is just so hilarious is like, I think that kind of political analysis from the IDW types is really dated at this point. Like the online left audience that they're trying to appeal to with that kind of deflection. Yeah, like the Bernie people don't like MSNBC, but they're able to make a distinction between Rachel Maddow and Mehdi Hasan,
Sure.
and the value of the analysis. It's just like he was incredibly lazy going into the interview, and that's what's jarring to me.
It's kind of the knee-jerk Greenwaldian reaction,
Yes.
where it's like, even where he does the first, "Oh, you did the what happened to you" thing, which Greenwald does the same thing, where people do say, "What happened? You seem to have changed a little bit." And he says, "Oh, I haven't changed," blah, blah, blah. And so that a lot of the same kind of techniques and even rhetorical tics are playing out here with Taibbi. I think certainly you have to go at the actual discussion and accusations at hand and not, we all work for someone and sometimes we work for billionaires or larger institutions that make mistakes or that are certainly imperfect. But Mehdi was pretty on his game and pretty sharp, I think, by actually asking substantive questions. And so by just elevating into, "Oh, you're MSNBC corporate media," something like that, that doesn't really work for me, especially when on the other side, Taibbi could certainly be accused of working for corporate interests, which are Elon Musk.
Yes, and he really does nail him on that later. But it's just also like the complete credulity that Taibbi has when Mehdi asks him about the discrepancy where he's given the Hunter Biden information, but the Trump stuff is withheld from him. And the only reason we know about it is because of the congressional testimony. We find out that it was the Chrissy Teigen tweet of him calling, what, it was a pussy ass bitch or something like that Trump had to get taken down from a model. Like, it shows how petty he is. I mean,
the thinnest skin.
And by the way, they obliged that, right? They obliged that, and the congressional testimony showed over and over that they also bent the terms of service to keep him on Twitter despite his multiple violations, because for them, what he can't contend with is that Trump and his tweets being so explosive and controversial and synonymous with the platform was a huge help for the platform, because people would go to see what crazy shit the president was going to tweet on Twitter. And that's
Absolutely.
why they had an incentive to keep him on. It's the exact inverse of what he's contending here.
Yeah, and I think actually when Taibbi in that clip we saw brags that he got the general counsel of Twitter fired, which is odd because he doesn't sort of accuse the guy of any specific malfeasance necessarily. I mean, he is former FBI, so that is worth noting. And again, that's like the classic sort of Twitter file trope here is like, oh, there's a guy from the government, bad stuff is happening. I mean, yeah, if someone goes from FBI general counsel to Twitter, I want to know about that. But think about the fact that Elon Musk didn't even know.
Yeah.
Like that, and Elon Musk is obviously the source, or at least behind the Twitter files and the dissemination of them, and has supported it very publicly. And he didn't even know that his own general counsel had formerly been at the FBI and would be sort of the bogeyman in some of this early Twitter file stuff. Like, that shows a level of kind of negligence that I think also flows down to this whole Twitter files project, knowing that Musk is really the one pulling the strings and that Musk himself is not very competent at times.
Exactly. Let's go to the second part here, where Mehdi Hasan asked Matt Taibbi about his reporting on the Stanford University's election integrity project. And this is like I was reminded of what it was, that cringy Naomi Wolf thing that happened, right?
Oh my goodness, with her book?
Right, where it was called out in real time that the entire premise of her book was essentially a research error.
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
Well, get ready to relive it here, Jacob, because this is what happens when Mehdi Hassan asks him about this element of the Twitter files.
By Jim Jordan. By the way, you said about factual inaccuracies, Matt. Let's talk factual inaccuracies. Stanford. You talk a lot about the Election Integrity Project in the Twitter files, which Stanford and the University of Washington founded to monitor attacks on our elections. And you say some stuff about them that a lot of your critics say is not true, and that affects your credibility. You said the EIP was founded in response to the government dropping its proposal for a disinformation governance. Well, there you are. We're quoting you on screen. It wasn't. It was formed 2 years earlier. You suggest it was government funded, even though during the 2020 election that you're covering, it wasn't. You say they labeled 22 million tweets as misinformation in the run-up to the 2020 vote. They didn't. They flagged 3,000 election misinformation tweets for labeling, so you were only 21,997,000 off. And you also claim the EIP was, let me finish the question, you can come back in. You also claim the EIP was partnered with the government Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, CISA, to censor Twitter, but you mix up CISA, CISA, a Homeland Security Agency, with the Center for Internet Security, the CIS, which is a non-profit. In fact, you added an A to CIS. I think people can see it there in brackets to make that false claim. It's just error after error, Matt, on just this one topic.
Error. But the other ones aren't. The 22 million number came from their own report.
Yeah, it came from a report in March. Do you know what the 22 million number is, Matt? Can you tell me? Because we checked. 22 million is the number of tweets about election misinformation that they just mapped. How many tweets were they? The ones they actually flagged to Twitter before the election, 22 million came after the election. It wasn't in the run-up. They flagged 3,000. So you were off by 21,997,000. There's another error.
They said a lot of things. I stand by my story.
You stand by what story? You stand by 22 million were flagged in the run-up to the election, even though that number came in March 2021, which was after the election.
No, this came in their report after the election.
Which was about some total of tweets that they counted on the election. What they flagged to Twitter was 2,980 tweets, I believe. So that's nowhere near 22 million.
Come
on, what? You got something wrong. You got CISA wrong. Why did you add A? Okay, Matt, why did you add A in square brackets? Do you understand why people worry about?
I actually thought that.
And why didn't you fix it? I just checked the tweet before I came on air. It's been 3 weeks since it was flagged to you. Why not fix it? Do you not have editors at the racket?
I didn't realize that until now.
Okay, and what about the date? You got the date wrong when it was founded. You said it was founded in response to the Disinformation Board. That was last year.
Well, because Stamos is saying in the video that we were sort of created to fill the gaps.
But no, that's not what you say in the tweet. That's not what you say in the tweet.
SIO was created in 2018.
No. You say, this is what you say, that the EIP was created after the public uproar paused the Disinformation Board. That's wrong. You need to correct that as well, don't you?
After the...
That's what your words. You say, to quote you, after public uproar paused the Orwellian Disinformation Governance Board, Stanford created the EIP. That's wrong.
Well, that's what they say.
You don't need sources, Matt. You could check the EIP website. It says it was created in 2020.
Well, that's the date that I just said.
And the Disinformation Board was 2022.
Okay. All right. Well, then that is an error.
Yeah, that's a pretty big error. That's a pretty big error. Look, Jacob, I mean, you do your own writing. But, like, you're not trying to say... you're not getting hauled in front of Congress about this, about, I know you're launching your Substack, right? About the writing in your Substack changing the complexion of American democracy. Like, that's the grandiose claims that Taibbi's making here. And part of this is, like, these IDW guys that all left in Greenwald's open letter when he left The Intercept because his editor wanted him to make some changes. They pretend that they're being censored when in reality they just don't want editors, but they need them because the dude mixed up the CSA with the government agency CISA and then put in brackets, or what's the other acronym? I'm mixing them up myself, but it's not my reporting. Either way, he conflated the two and got it wrong by, as Mehdi said, a figure of 21 million plus.
Yeah, I mean, not to sound like some pedant or journalism traditionalist, but like, because I mean, I have a Substack that I post things on once in a while, but you know, editors and engaging with an institution or some organization can add something to the journalistic process. Sometimes they save you from making horrible mistakes, or they see things you don't. Hopefully, there's a genuine fact-checking process on like a major feature like that. I mean, that what I think this is a reminder of is the questions around the whole production process here, really, of the journalism. Like from the tweet threads, which are basically unreadable, to the sourcing, to how are these edited, all this stuff. And I think another question here is, this reminds me a lot actually of reporting on tech, which I've done for more than a decade. But a lot of these guys in tech think that they've discovered ideas for the first time. That's why Uber is always like reinventing the bus or something like that. But like, so they think all their ideas are purely original. And you see that with Musk sometimes too. They don't read books. They don't really care for sort of existing bodies of knowledge. Because that challenges their own mental superiority. And I think that's what some of the IDW people, the Substack people, Greenwald, Taibbi, I think they're doing that a bit with internet moderation, content moderation, the study of disinformation, all these sorts of fields that, yes, they do have a lot of bullshit or grifters or, some unsavory connections to government agencies, things like that. Like they are imperfect, but they are existing areas of study. Like, people have been looking at this stuff, and content moderation is flawed, but probably necessary. And there are people who have been studying it for 10, 15 years who could tell you more about that. And if Taibbi was really doing his due diligence, I think he would have talked to those kinds of people, besides obviously like producing this in a more coherent fact check sort of way.
Yeah.
But you get this sense that they're just channeling this id and this rage at the censorship you were talking about, that people don't like their ideas, and now it's happening on a national sort of corporate fusion of corporate and government interests, and everyone's being censored.
And to clarify, what Taibbi conflated in his reporting was that, so essentially the EIP recommended around 3,000 tweets that were election misinformation. And then there was also a retroactive study about the 2020 election and in the wake of it, in which there was an analysis of the 22 million figure that he discusses about election misinformation on social media. But there was no action taken on that front. The action was the 3,000 figure. The 22 million was in the analysis. And then he conflates the two and pretends that this is like the censorship on Twitter as being prescribed by the government, in which he also makes an error conflating the nonprofit with the government agency, is censoring in mass. So there's two false premises underlying one of the major elements of his claim that Twitter is so censorious.
And I think, again, like that's what you want an expert to explain to you before you put it in writing. Like, oh, actually, this report says this, whether you're talking about the people who made the report or some outside person. But, I saw also he was going at it with Alex Stamos on Twitter, who is at the Stanford EIP project, and he has his hand in a bunch of things. There's some things I disagree with Stamos about. He was a high-level executive at Facebook, but he's a very respected figure in tech and in this world of kind of information security and privacy and balancing these competing needs. And he knows his stuff. He's not an amateur. So it's kind of like someone who just discovered this field a few months ago, which Taibbi seems to, challenging a professor to a debate or something like that. And similarly, Stamos's business partner, Chris Krebs, who was the head of CISA, the actual government agency, it was famously sort of the one Trump appointee who was fired, who people could feel some sympathy for because he was considered very competent and nonpartisan at his job and at protecting election infrastructure, and then went on to found this firm with Stamos. So just from a strategic perspective, you're kind of tangling with people who are experts, who are well regarded, who know generally what they're talking about, I think. So, yeah, you have to come more prepared if you're going to challenge their reporting.
Yeah, well said. And let's just play one more final part here before I let you go, Jacob.
Sure.
This part arguably is my favorite part of the entire interview because, as I said earlier, we literally had Murtaza Hussain, who broke this story on yesterday, coincidentally, right before this interview ended up dropping. And The Intercept, Murtaza, and Ryan Grimm jointly reported on how Twitter, under the direction of Elon Musk, is working with Narendra Modi in India to censor critics and help with internet shutdowns, which kind of flies in the face of his posture as a free speech warrior, and that's why he ended up buying Twitter. India is its third largest market. That's a big part of it. But, if Taibbi also is trying to protect free speech with his reporting, which is also what he has claimed, you would think that you might want to call out that inconsistency as an objective journalist. That's not what happens here.
I get that you don't want to reveal your sources, you're a journalist, but Barry Weiss has outed him. He's outed himself. What's interesting about Elon Musk is that we checked. You've tweeted over 30 times about Musk since he announced he was going to buy Twitter last April, and not a word of criticism about him in any of those 30-plus tweets. Musk is a billionaire who's been found to have violated labor laws multiple times, including in the past few days. He's attacked labor unions, reportedly fired employees on a whim, slammed the idea of a wealth tax, told his millions of followers to vote Republican last year, and in response to a right-wing coup against Bolivian leftist president Evo Morales, he tweeted, "We'll coup whoever we want." And yet you've been silent on all of that. How did you go, Matt, from being the scourge of Wall Street, the man who called Goldman Sachs the vampire squid, to being unwilling to say anything critical at all about this right-wing reactionary anti-union billionaire?
Hello? Am I still on?
Yes, you're still on. I'm just wondering how come you've never criticized Musk despite all that?
Look, so I like Elon Musk. I met him. This is part of the calculation when you do one of these stories. Are they going to give you information that's going to make you look stupid? Do you think their motives are sincere about doing X or Y? And I didn't. I thought. I mean, I did. I thought his motives were sincere about the Twitter files, and I admired them. I think he did a tremendous public service in opening the files up. But that doesn't mean I have to agree with him about everything. And
Agreed, I agree with you, but you never disagree with him. You've gone silent. People would say that's access journalism.
No, I haven't reported anything that limits my ability to talk about Elon Musk.
So will you criticize him today for banning journalists, for working with Modi government to shut down speech, for being anti-union? You can go for it. I'll give you as much time as you like. Would you like to criticize Musk now?
No, I don't particularly want to. Look, I didn't criticize him really before, and I think that what the Twitter files are is a step in the right direction.
But it's the same Twitter that he's running right now.
I disagree with him. If you want to ask, I think this
understood, Matt. Well, I'll ask you a specific one.
You asked me this. No.
It's not in bad faith, Matt. Sorry. You say that Twitter... Hold on. Let me finish my question. You're saying that he's good for Twitter and good for speech. I'm saying he's using Twitter to help one of the most right-wing governments in the world censor speech. I will criticize that. Will you?
I have to look at the story first. I'm not looking at it now.
Hold on. I posted the story 2 weeks ago. You tweeted at me.
I don't watch the Mehdi Hassan show.
You do. Actually, you do, because you tweeted at me saying, invite me on the show and I'll tell you my views. Here you are. What is your view? There it is. There it is. Look. Yeah, and you said, look, we'll read your words. Why don't you invite me on your show to talk about it, since you're so absolutely sure of what I'll say? You're right. I'm not sure. What is your view on Musk working with Modi to censor speech?
That's what you ask him about the particulars about it. But listen, this came up the first time. I think it was Twitter Files number 6, when you said after this was a big one that we had done about the relationship between Twitter, the FBI, and the DHS. And as that story came out, you were giving me a hard time about tweeting through it, I think was the quote. Essentially, you said, you're arguing that this information was not in the public interest, that I somehow shouldn't have done this story that I'd worked hard on, because Elon Musk tweeted something? You don't think that story
No, I said
was
he
in the
banned journalists. I think hold on, Matt. If you're doing a story about free speech on Twitter and the head of Twitter bans journalists, yeah, I think most people, by the way, Barry Weiss, your partner in crime on that, your colleague, your reporter, sorry for that euphemism, your reporting colleague, she actually did call him out. So it's weird that Barry Weiss had more integrity on that. Some might argue, your critics might say, than you did. Look, we're running out of time. You don't want to talk about India, that's fine. You can go away and research it, but you volunteered.
Yeah, I mean, so that was one of my favorites. First of all, that Mehdi Hassan, just a standing ovation. But one of his toughest burns in that situation is saying that Elon Musk, that Barry Weiss has more integrity than Matt Taibbi. Because if you've fallen that far, that's really brutal. But like, just to return to the point of how lazy he was going into this interview. His only rebuttal to that was, I don't watch the Mehdi Hassan show. Like, I don't watch MSNBC. We know you don't like MSNBC. This is the one tactic you have. And then he had nothing. He didn't even prepare enough to know that, like, the exchange that they had to get him on the show was Matt responding to a tweet about that particular story, about Modi's censorship, which is what was the impetus. He didn't even do that level of preparation. He just thought, this was a part of a Twitter spat more broadly. And you'd think that you would do that, but he did not.
Yeah.
And hello to your cat. That is one cute cat.
I'm sorry. My buddy Harry back here does what he wants. So now
Don't
he's
apologize.
in the interview. But, it felt like the kind of thing that Matt Taibbi in some earlier iteration would have made fun of someone for, like this guy had no idea what he was talking about, had very simple evasions. And yet, there's got to be some way he can talk around this stuff without displeasing his incredibly sensitive source, who, of course, is Elon Musk. I mean, we did see that, what was this, a couple months back when some of this stuff started, Barry Weiss had a brief critique unrelated to the Modi thing of Elon, and then Elon Musk unfollowed her immediately. I mean, the guy could not be, obviously, more sensitive and easily offended. But more substantively about the actual issue, like this speaks to my journalistic heart a little bit because I've reported on this, not Modi specifically, but I've written for the New Republic and the Washington Post about Twitter in Saudi Arabia, which is a whole mess, and basically Twitter having a lot of its real security and speech problems are not in the U.S. They're overseas. They're in Saudi Arabia, they're in India, and in other countries where Twitter has made alliances with ruling politicians. The Mudge, the sort of nickname of the whistleblower who came forward a few months back, he cited this in testimony before Congress that there are Indian political operatives on the staff at Twitter that were hired intentionally, that there was a Chinese spy possibly working there. We know that there were Saudi spies. So those are actually, I think, the real speech issues, which is you have people being oppressed or arrested or intimidated in other countries because of what they tweet and because Twitter chooses to do nothing, both the old regime under Jack and the new regime under Musk.
Yeah, I mean, and so there really is, I guess there's no difference there except for the fact that Jack wasn't as open in terms of like, Elon acquired the platform to say, I'm going to support free speech in this way. And I just, when he said word for word, I like Elon Musk, that was really all you needed to know. And he couldn't even muster, to your point. Musk is so sensitive. Taibbi couldn't even muster, like, if that's true, I vehemently disagree with it because I'm a supporter of free speech. And that makes me think that, and I'm just speculating here, obviously, and I won't, there's more than a source-reporter relationship going on here. Because the reporting happened on the Twitter platform, the Twitter files happened on the platform. I think Musk wanted that. And it was a very financially lucrative opportunity for Taibbi, who then says, well, I didn't put it on my Substack, I put it on Twitter. It was a massive advertisement for your Substack. And then you put everything behind the paywall. And so that's the incentive here that's so perverse. And it just, man.
Yeah, he has no incentive to go against Musk in any way at all. I mean, even if he said he's not paid for this stuff, but obviously the financial incentives exist and are there. And we learned just the other day that Twitter has a list of 35 sort of VIP users, among them, of course, Cat Turd, as he should be. But Glenn Greenwald is one of them. I don't know if if Taibbi is, but he has Elon Musk's phone number. What else can you say? Like, he has the inside line here on a website that is very important for his career and getting his work out there.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. So very well done there by Mehdi. And it's a clearly they have a deep relationship there, and Musk and Taibbi. And I encourage everybody to check out the full interview, Mehdi Hassan and Matt Taibbi. But like, I should have put some sort of content warning, because seeing a guy get knocked out rhetorically on television
may
not
feel
safe for
vicarious
work.
Embarrassment.
Truly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jacob, thank you for sitting through that with us. You can check out the 4-part podcast on FTX, which is entitled, I'm finding it here in my doc, The Naked Emperor, about Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, crypto generally. I'm going to be giving that a listen over the weekend. Really appreciate it, Jacob. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks. It was fun.
For sure. All right, guys. We're going to take a quick break and head into the fun half. God, I had one more thought about that last part that completely escaped me. But it just, he also did the, is this thing on? Like, I don't have the connection anymore.
I have to go.
Yeah. It just.
Can you hear me? Mehdi, what? I'm going through a tunnel.
The contrast of his reporting on Goldman Sachs and the vampire squid, which Mehdi plays at the start of the interview, and then his eager stewardship on behalf of Elon Musk, it's just jarring. It is just like absolutely jarring. So, all right, guys, we're going to head into the fun half. Going to be a truncated fun half. No calls today, I'm sorry, but we will be having some fun, going over some more clips. The number is 646-257-3920. Check out Left Reckoning. Check out ESVN. We'll have a new episode on Monday where I want to make a case. I'll tease it just for some. In a strike in a sports league. I'm going to be making that case on Monday. But we did speak about the controversy surrounding Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark in the women's basketball championship, Iowa versus LSU.
Who has seemingly this morning announced that she will, in fact, be joining the team to go to the White House after the whole prolonged, back and forth between
We'll
Jill
talk
Biden.
about that too.
Yeah, we could
Jill
get into
Biden
that as well.
Did a dummy thing and said, "Well, we should invite Caitlin
in the
Clark."
Spirit of comedy and sportsmanship, let's have the losers come too.
Right, which never happens, and it seemed like, oh, you got to protect the white girl, of course. And Angel Reese was like, "Screw you, I'm not coming." And then she's backtracked, and so like that point is you realize, oh wait, she's 20 years old.
Having to do like high level PR.
I mean, like that was me back then. Like, we're breaking up. No, we're back together. We're breaking up. We're back
Jill
together.
Biden is stupid. You're dumb for Madam First Lady.
Yeah. So, and I loved too. It would totally be something I would do at 20. Like, we're not coming to the White House, and neither are my friends. We're all sticking behind.
We're going to Martha's Vineyard and go hanging out with the Obamas. It's like, that's logistically like super difficult.
And then so she was like, all right, well, this is a little unrealistic.
Go enjoy your win. Go to the White House. Get lavished. It'll be fine.
Yeah, totally. So check that out. YouTube.com/ESVN show. Jeff Bezos' continued influence on the NFL and more. All right, actually, no calls today, so you don't even need to know the number. Sorry about that. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on! Fuck them.
Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. It is the fun half, everybody. Wow. We're going to read some IMs, and we'll get to some more clips. Fart Twain says, watching Mehdi smackdown Taibbi is such a nice end-of-week treat. I totally agree. Man Shovel, Mehdi Hassan promised fireworks during the Taibbi interview, and boy did he deliver. It's great to see